Hello Whisky fans. So I recently did a review of Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 Tennessee Whiskey, which is the standard product in the Jack Daniel's range, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't really like it a lot. Didn't really like it at all. It's not the sort of thing that I would buy, but everyone deserves a second chance, right? So this is Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select Tennessee Whiskey. Uniquely crafted, handmade barrels. I'm not sure if we've even got the technology to automate making barrels yet. Possibly we have, I've no idea. But the barrels for this, I'm reliably reassured, are handmade. So the whole story behind this is, it's obviously a related product to the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. It's a similar whiskey, but it's bottled at 45%, and this is supposed to be taken, hand selected, from some of the better casks in the warehouse at Jack Daniel's. And they're actually implying that this is also, by calling it single barrel, they're implying that it's single cask. So in Scotch whiskey at least, if a whiskey is single cask, that generally means that you're going to pay some serious money for it. It's going to be high proof. It's implied that it's some really special stuff, and it tends to be very limited edition, low production runs. But this Jack Daniel's, when I first saw it, I thought that price point, I mean this sells in the UK for around £40–45 full price. Can it really be single cask for that lower price point? That seems like a lot of trouble to go through for basically a mass market commodity whiskey. But if you look at the bottles on these, and I've had a few of these over the years, it does actually give you a cask number. And it's not like the Monkey Shoulder Batch 27, where they're all the same batch. The cask numbers on the bottles for these do actually vary quite a lot, so it does seem that they actually are, somehow, single cask offerings. Sometimes you'll find 2 or 3 bottles on the same shelf next to each other that came from the same cask. But more often than not, my experience is that you quite often find them all mixed up. So in theory, one bottle to the next should give you a noticeably different whiskey. For anyone that's interested, the bottle that I'm reviewing in this review, this particular bottle that I have, is cask number 17-5313 Rick L14, and it was bottled on the 19th of August 2017. I almost read that as the 8th of the 19th 2017, because the Americans put the date the other way around. And I've just thought, Rick L14, does that imply that this cask was 14 levels up? Because if it does, that's quite staggering, quite scary. I'm not sure how I'd feel about being in a warehouse with casks that high above my head. Generally, in traditional Scotch warehouses, they're traditionally stacked 3 high. Not always the case, but casks stacked 14 high, if that's what that L14 means, that's quite staggering. It does actually say on the back of the box that the casks used for this Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select do tend to be the ones that are higher up. So that may actually be the case. I guess being the casks that are higher up, they'll possibly be stored in slightly higher ambient temperatures, possibly with a more extreme swing between the hottest and coldest temperatures that cask is stored at. So you would think that they'd maybe age a little bit more quickly, maybe a more extractive maturation. I'm thinking something more along the lines of a quarter cask Scotch whisky, which I've probably said before I'm not a huge fan of, but let's see what is done to this particular whiskey. Let's see what we've got in the glass. So on the nose, one good thing is that it is immediately recognisable as a Jack Daniel's product, and it's a lot more fuller. It's basically Jack Daniel's on steroids. It's fruity. You've got milk chocolate raisins and some peanut notes. And it's like fresh peanuts actually in the shells, and peanut brittle, popcorn, corn syrup, All of those things that are mostly, to some extent, familiar with anyone that's a drinker of Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. Also getting a little hint of light mint on the nose and a little bit of sharp citrus as well. So that sharp citrus, that's not something that I can say that I've ever experienced in a Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 at 40%. Whether you would have that if the Old No. 7 was bottled at a proper drinking strength, that's something that we can't tell. But so far I'm definitely saying that this Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select is definitely a big step up from the Old No. 7. There really is quite a nuttiness on the nose of this Tennessee whiskey, and that nuttiness mixed with the syrupy corn syrup notes that you've already got, it combines to something that really reminds me of Dundee cake. So like a sweet, sticky, syrupy, nutty cake, if you're not familiar with what Dundee cake actually is. And it has to be said that the nose on this one is very smooth. It's a very well made whiskey. So one of the criticisms that I had for the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 was that it's a bland whiskey, but what you have got is lots of dry tannins and something that tastes and smells like tired old casks. There's a lot of extractive woodiness, and I think because the ABV is so low with that Old No. 7, that's really most of what you're left with. On this one, there definitely is some dry oak there, but it's much more pleasant. It's a dry oak that really merges with a really pleasant wood spice and an overall biscuitiness. It's really a much better experience than the Old No. 7. Let's see how it tastes. So I think the words to describe the palate on this one are full and sweet. It's a lovely syrupy prune juice and chocolate type flavour, offset by some quite nice rye spiciness, I'm going to say, and some medium spicy and slightly grassy but not particularly dry oak from the casks. Definitely getting some very sweet corn syrup notes in there, and that sweet syrupiness, it goes really well with the mouthfeel, which is not thin at all. Even though it's only 45%, it's made such a difference to this over the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. It's a really fantastic, full and sweet and coating mouthfeel that goes really well with that full, sweet and syrupy profile. There's also a little hint of cherry in there, and a little bit of peanut brittle as well. As for the finish, it's medium long, sweet and nutty, with pleasant sort of lingering, bitter, grassy, oaky note. Again, I can't quite remember what I said exactly with the finish on the Jack Daniel's, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been positive. This, through and through, right from the first nosing right to the end of the finish, it's a really high quality bourbon in my opinion. It is still a fairly youthful whiskey. It is a young and feisty whiskey that really packs a punch, but it's not to say that it's immature anyway. It really is a big step up in quality. Another thing that I want to mention about this whiskey is that the fact that they're passing it off as a single cask product, and as I mentioned before, I was initially very skeptical about that. I just didn't believe that for the price point and the volumes of production they'd bother doing something like that. But I have tasted 5 bottles of this particular expression now, and I can reliably say that they have all been different to some extent. I'm going to give this one in particular a B+. This is one of the better ones that I've had, and I'd say the grades of the 5 that I've tried, they would range from a middling B to a good B+. And the main differences are that some of them tend to be a little bit drier and a little bit more challenging, and others tend to be a little bit more heavy on the sweet and syrupy side. But there's really not a huge difference in quality level. It's just enough of a difference that I'm noticing that I do actually believe that this really is a single cask bottling. But from what I've experienced, they've all been really good whiskies and well worth the price, and much better than the old Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. Cheers.